Welcome to the latest edition of Fit Talks. We have Howard Sharfman with us, and Fit Talk is designed to help people become more financially fit, and they get more information about finances, investing, and how to build wealth, physical fitness, how to become more fit, how to have more energy, and lifestyle to enjoy it is how those two things impact your lifestyle so that you can truly enjoy the lifestyle that you always wanted to. Like I said before, we have Howard Sharfman here. Howard is the CEO of FinFit Life, and he's been a financial professional for over 20 years. He helps everyday people, and he also works with some of the most wealthy families and individuals in this country. And we're very, very excited to have you here. So welcome, Howard.
Well, thank you, Bill. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
This is just a little podcast we call the Fit Talk. So it's very informal to talk about subjects that matter. And thank you for taking the time to be with us. We're talking about finance, and one of the big things that always comes up is budgeting. So, when we start talking about budgeting, what are some of the things that come to mind when you hear that word?
Sure. It's a scary word to some people. It's a scary word because they don't like the process. They don't like having to make decisions. They don't like to make priorities. But I think of budgeting as a tool, and a tool that allows you to prioritize what you want. And that doesn't matter if it's in business or if it's in your personal life. A budget is a tool, and it helps you make good choices. And those good choices could be on the income side. Those good choices might be on the expense side. Those good choices might be on the risk management side, but it will help you make good choices. Without that document, without that budget, it's really hard to make those good choices. You don't have the information that you need.
So speaking of that, what types of information do you normally put in a budget? Because obviously there's expenses and income, but how does somebody start that process?
Sure. And I think income has to be divided. So there's earned income and there's non-earned income. And it's important to divide those two areas inside of your budget. And at the beginning, one of them, unearned income, might have zero. But if the goal is for unearned income to have a significant number, let's put it on the budget. Missing a budget and having variances should affect people. So if we have a budget item there for unearned income and it's at zero and we want it to be at some other number, we have a variance. So I think it's important to both separate earned income and non-earned income. I think budgets need to be reasonable. This isn't going to be, I'm going to make $10 million this year and then everything's going to be okay. What do they say on TV and all those ads with mutual funds? Past performance doesn't equate to future performance. But the fact is, there's a reason why someone got the past performance in their work life. And unless something changes, they're probably going to have that moving forward. So let's, one, set reasonable goals and expectations for income. And then we have to do something that's depressing and hard. I know it's depressing because in my household, one of the most depressing days of the year is when the annual statement from American Express comes out. And I say to Jamie, let's go over it. And then she runs and hides. And the fact is, I spend more money than my wife does, and she shouldn't be afraid of going over expenses. I should be. However, it's important to not put your head in the sand. It's important to allocate your expenses. And then all expenses aren't the same. I think there are three types of expenses. And the first type is the most important, and that is simple, your expense for savings. It needs to be on the first line of the budget under expenses, not on the last line of the budget. Your savings is not what's left over. Your savings is what you start with. Because there is something that I technically refer to as stuff syndrome. There's too much stuff in this world, and stuff costs a lot of money. I was talking to a friend of my daughter's the other day. That person had a very similar job to the job that I had when I graduated college. It was a really good job. I was an analyst at a bank. I made a significant amount of money for someone my age, but my rent was $240 a month. My parking was free. I didn't have to pay for internet or cell phones or cable TV because there weren't those things. Beers, and if you know me, I don't drink much, but beer were 2 for a quarter. In today's world, life is much more expensive. And by the way, I didn't live in the middle of nowhere. I lived on a very busy corner in Chicago, Illinois. And that's what it costs. So life is hard. So what do we have to do? We have to make it as easy as possible by starting with our savings goal, and that's an expense. And when we look at it like an expense in terms of it's the first thing that we budget for, then we always hit it. It's the last things that we don't hit. So after the expense, there are things that are non-negotiable. Once we sign a lease, our rent is our rent. Our cost for health insurance is our health insurance. Our cost for auto insurance is our auto insurance. And I'm not saying we shouldn't make good choices and we should buy well. But once we're in a contract, that's where we are. So we have some non-discretionary expenses, and they have to be in the second part of the budget. And the third part of the budget are the discretionary ones. And we can have lots of spirited conversation about what's discretionary or not. You know what's discretionary or not. Stop fooling yourself. Okay, that doesn't mean deprive yourself and your family of everything. I don't want that. Life should be fun. Fun doesn't always have to cost, but life should be fun. And you're going to spend some money on things that other people might say, well, you didn't need to do that. However, let's put that last in our budget because that's where we're going to have to make some tough choices if we want to balance our budget.
So true. I know that when my wife and I, when we first got married, we didn't have a heck of a lot of money. So just going on a date was we took a ride to the lakefront in Chicago, and we made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and had some chips and, and Cokes. If you wanted to be a little bit more spirited, you get a nice bottle of wine and you watch the moon. You know, it's you do what you got to do. But real quickly, I know that you were talking about 3 areas. I just want to repeat it. One of the expenses is really your savings. You're paying yourself. That's the bill that you're going to pay. The second one is the non-negotiables. Those are your rent, cars, health insurance, and then the discretionary. What we find is when people say, well, if I have to make a cut, usually you got to go to the discretionary first before you do anything else.
That's why they use the word discretionary. And I don't want you to cut your savings because that beautiful thing called time value of money and compound interest. And by the way, there's lots of theories you could find online. And there are some theories that say, why would you save money when your income is the lowest? Save money when your income is higher. Well, that works until it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little more conservative than that. I saved money day one. I have a bunch of stories where I had discretionaries and I had to cut them. And I remember the day when I charged a dinner and I knew I couldn't pay off my credit card, which is so very important. You know, high cost debt is not a way one gets to financial success. And it bothered me. And I left that dinner and I went to my office and I said, I don't want this to happen anymore. And I was in the insurance business, so I controlled my income. I controlled at least my activity. I made sure my activity was such that my income would be there. And if my activity was there and my income wasn't, it was a training issue that I needed to learn more, be more special in some way. But I remember that feeling and I didn't like it because the non-negotiable was my, what we called at the time, check-o-matic. Now they call it pre-authorized check, but check-o-matic monthly life insurance premium on a policy that I still own today. My 401k contributions, my emergency fund contributions, those were non-negotiable because those were on the top of my budget. But that dinner, it wasn't a good choice. Although I must say that the fact that I'm talking about that dinner 35 years later, maybe it was a good choice because it's truly affected me because I didn't like the way it made me feel.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. In today's world, you know, talking about income, there's a lot of choices of work and things that you can do. And one of the big things that we're hearing more and more is having a good side hustle or having a good side business or start your own business while you're still working. And ironically, my father used to say 9 to 5, you make a living, and 5 to 9, you make a life. And my dad always had a second job, and I've seen that to be part of work ethic. Talk about income for a second, especially as you're starting to develop more of skills and things of that sort. Talk about that and how does that might be applied to when you're doing your planning, what that could do to your budget and what that could do to your life.
Sure. Hey, life is a lot easier. It's not perfect. There's always problems, but life is sure a lot easier when there's not an income or cash flow problem. But I've seen people who have made tremendous amounts of income. You could spend every dollar. I don't care what you make. I know people who have. I watched American Greed last night, actually, and there was a lawyer that was on. And the quote that I heard was from someone who said, I don't know how he's spending like a billionaire on multimillionaire money. And guess what? Not only did he go broke, but he did some bad things too.
Mhm.
So I think the important thing is to keep things in proportion to what one's earning in the expense side. Now let's talk about side hustle for a moment, because I have a different theory. I was in the insurance business. So I started as an analyst at a bank. I didn't like being an analyst. I think I was pretty good at it, but I didn't like it. But I did a deal that involved insurance. I really like that. I like the leverage. I like the tax-free nature of it. I like the completion of it. I thought it solved so many problems. And it involved a loan, so it involved the leverage of that in the leverage of the premiums. So I like that a lot. And so I went into the insurance business. So I learned and became an expert in the insurance business. So let me tell you what my side hustle was. So if I'm pretty good at selling life insurance, my first side hustle was I wanted to be good at selling annuities. My second side hustle was I want to be good at working with clients about qualified plans. My third side hustle was I was in the health insurance business and then the property and casualty business and all of that. And those were my side hustles because I knew something about it. It was close to what I did. For me to go do something completely different didn't ever make sense to me. Now, there might not have been as many opportunities in 1987 as there are today for different types of side hustles, if you will. But I'd like someone to think about a side hustle. And the way I thought about my budgeting was I need to do a certain amount of revenue in life insurance. I need to do a certain amount of revenue in annuities and qualified plans and personalized insurance and property and casualty. And then I got into the recruiting business and I had to make a certain amount of money from my team. So those were my side hustles. Does it work for everyone? Maybe not. But I thought I had a much better chance of being outstanding at those things than if I just would have said, you know what, I should start a business. I'm going to start a valet company because they work at night, and I'll own a valet company and I'll get restaurants to, hire me and things like that. Well, I don't know anything about that. I don't know where to find those people. I know how to find people who want to come into the financial service industry and help people. I knew how to work with a client on a different line of business. So that's the way I looked at side hustle, which just might be different than others.
Sure. No, that's good. And I always look at my wife and I, when we talk about budgeting, is there's an offense, which is the money earning, and defense is the expense management. And one of the things is to win the game. I was an ex-football coach. It's always to win the game. And it seems to be that winning the game is that you're going to be able to retire, to send your kids to school. You'll be able to get out of debt. And one of the big questions that always comes up is, what's the right way to think about retirement, specifically around retirement income? And I know that you work with a lot of people about building wealth, having retirement income, and transferring that wealth. Was curious to your thoughts on that.
Let's talk about that offense defense thing first. I know you were a quarterback, so you think offense wins games, but I came from Chicago, and outside of 1 year, defense won games in the rare situation where we won games. And you can outspend any amount of income. I had breakfast this morning with someone who was talking about his son-in-law, and his son-in-law had a 110-foot boat that costs him $1,100,000 a year to run. And I said, when's he getting his next boat? He looked at me and he said, how do you know that? I said, because everyone who has a big boat parks next to a bigger boat and says, I want that bigger boat. He said, yep, he has a 150-foot boat on order. Okay. That boat, I don't know what it costs. In excess of $10 million with excess of $2 million of annual expenses. I don't even know what the son-in-law does, but I'm going to find out because he sounds like he needs some planning and could be a good client. But I didn't think that was the time or place to make that ask. But you can outspend any amount of income. You can outspend it with art, and you can spend it with jets and cars and travel and everything. I'm not saying you shouldn't drive a nice car. I'm not saying you shouldn't, go to a nice restaurant. But I have a friend. He's on the Forbes 100 list. He's a very good friend. And I had a conversation with him about safety, about the safety of his family, which you have to worry about. And part of the advisory nature and when advising people like this is it's not just about the money, it's about other things. And we talked about private aviation or general aviation. And he said to me, every time I get on American Airlines, I think I save $40,000. I'd rather give it to charity than get on a private jet. Now, I don't know. I would have people would say, because he could afford anything. I have people who say money's wasted on him. Or I could have people that say, which I would, that's someone who has their priorities. He's young. He said, I'm busy. I'm on the phone when I'm waiting at an airport. It's no big deal. Now, at some point, he might change his mind. But at the end of the day, we have to make choices. We have to do what's right. There's a responsibility of wealth. And I think that was a perfect example of it. So, but at the end of the day, there's offense and defense. You could outspend whatever you make. So I like the area of let's work on the defense first. Let's make sure that we're going to manage our finances. And then let's go kill it on the offense. Let's go score 100 points in the game. Let's go make sure that we're helping as many families as possible because you know what the byproduct of helping more people is we get paid more. How cool is that? So we're so lucky that we're in a business like that because a lot of people are not in a business like that. But the more people I could affect in a positive way, the more income I can make. And I think that's really important. So I like the defense first, and we're not going to ignore the offense. It's about both things, but I like the defense first.
And if I can, just a follow-up question on that, many people, if you're going to focus on a defense, you want to be able to have the win, and the win is that you'll be able to retire, that you're going to be able to have a pool of money or assets that will pay you to retire. Is there like there used to be a magic number. You have $1 million, and now they say $1 million isn't worth $1 million today, but it seems to be now more about income. So when someone's going through budgeting, and you were talking about priorities, there's also a priority that you need to keep the end in mind. Was curious if you had any thoughts about that for somebody that's brand new, young person in their 20s, just starting this process, some hints on that.
Sure. Inflation's real. Have you filled up your car lately? Have you, gone to a restaurant? Inflation's real.
Yeah.
So if we think in today, I'm going to use round numbers. I'm not saying these numbers are right. They're just round numbers, easy math. If one thinks that they need $100,000 a year to live today, how much are you going to need moving forward? A lot of that is on the type of planning that we do. So if I don't need to save for long-term care expenses because I have that covered with an insurance program, okay, I've taken a variable off the board and I don't have to worry about that, which I think is very important. So, but if we need $100,000 a year to live, Everyone has a financial calculator, and we could figure out what that would be with a future. So we know the rule of 72. We talk about it on the savings side. Do we talk about it on the expense side? Probably not, because it's really scary. It's
Mhm.
really scary. Now, the good news is we don't spend as much money as we age outside of healthcare. So if you have Medicare and you have long-term care, you kind of minimize some of the expenses. The other big expense are children and grandchildren. And we want what's best for them, but we can't have what's best for them and make it so we can't live. So we have to save for that. So I'm going to use that $100,000. Let's say if that's our future goal. How much money do you need? Well, if you need $100,000 of after-tax income, we need to assume we're not going to make more than 5% on our money. I hope we do. I hope everyone's an investment wizard and can do great things, or more importantly, hired an investment wizard. But let's assume we make no more than 5%. 5% is easy math, but I'm more comfortable with 4.5%. But if it's 5%, if we have 20 times that income in investment vehicles, so 20 times 100,000 is 2 million. You multiply that by 5%, it's $100,000. So if we want $100,000 of income, we need $2 million. Now, are we going to have Social Security? Yes. I'm kind of tired of people saying, oh, Social Security is not going to be there. Social Security is going to be there. No, why? Because it might cause some more inflation, but they have these little things called printing presses at the government, and they will turn them on before they make it so there's no Social Security. So we're going to have Social Security. I think I'm at 66. Some people are at 67. In France, they had riots when they wanted to make it into, I forget, 62.
Right.
So might be delayed a little bit, but let's take that off. I assume we're going to have that, but let's take care of most of it ourselves. So if that number is $2 million, we got to build to that 2 million. We have these amazing things called financial calculators or Excel spreadsheets, and we can figure out exactly how much we have to save. Now, we've talked about before about taxes. Let's make sure that we save in the most tax efficient way, because I believe, based on the federal deficit right now, based on the spending, based on the cost of Medicare and Medicaid, in the unknown cost of what healthcare will cost the government in the future, taxes are going to go up. They might be hidden, and they might be taxes that you don't realize. They might not say income tax, but they might say some other tax, but taxes are going to go up. So let's make sure that we're have buckets of money in the most tax efficient way. And I think everyone who's listening to this podcast understands what those assets are. Life insurance grows on a tax deferred basis. We could withdraw up to our basis tax free. We could borrow money over that tax free. And then when we die, there is a tax free death benefit. So we have to make sure those policies are funded well enough so we die with a tax free death benefit. And if we do, it's an incredibly efficient vehicle. And when people understand it, they put more and more of their percentage of savings in it. I'm not a big, put everything in one place, but I surely like the idea of money growing tax deferred, being able to take it out tax free and have it end in a tax free death benefit. Sure seems like a good idea to me, and it seems like a good idea to a lot of our clients.
Very good. Last question. Many people try to do it themselves. Everybody's, self-learner going on YouTube and things of that sort. And there's a lot of information, but it seems that the people that I talk to, especially as they started to build some wealth and they started to really have their lifestyle go to the spots where they wanted to, they had some type of coach. They either have a life coach, a financial professional, or a financial coach in their life. In closing remarks, what would you, to a person who's a millennial or a person who's in their mid 40s and is saying, I need to get better, what would you tell them about that?
It's really easy to say if you're on Instagram or you're on Facebook or you're writing something for an article that financial advisors are overpaid, that it's not worth the money, that you should stick your money in an index and go from there. I just don't buy it. And the empirical data doesn't say so. And then if I say that to someone, they will say, well, but the investment advisors can't beat the index. there's two parts or three parts of that beating the index isn't the only thing. Financial advisors are there to make sure you don't self-destruct. They make sure you don't sell at the low and buy at the high, which is in human nature will do that. They make sure you stay on plan. And there's a new study that's out there that talks about the value of financial advice being equal to almost 200 basis points annually. I believe that to be true. You know what they say about a lawyer who represents himself? They have a fool as a client and a fool as a lawyer. Am I that hard on financial advisors that do it for themselves? No, I'm not, because it's a little different. But I believe someone else needs to look at what you have, pay attention, and make recommendations. I set my asset allocation. I don't set anything under my asset allocation. I decide if I want to be international or not based on the information I have. I decide, how much private equity or hedge funds or other things that I want to invest on based on the knowledge that I have and the clients that I learned from. But I have someone there watching me to make sure I'm not going to screw it up. And screw it up is a technically sound word that I think is reasonable in this situation.
Yeah.
So I think just like I believe that my clients should not try to find their own insurance, I believe that it's not even about the insurance product. They'll always find the wrong one, but it's about going through the underwriting process. It's about making sure someone continues to pay their premiums. I just had someone who didn't pay a premium, and I called them and I said, "Hey, you didn't pay a premium." And like, "Oh my goodness!" And they went online and they paid it right away. Without me, who knows how long it would have been while they didn't have their insurance coverage. So financial professionals have value. And I love to work with my clients as an advisor on an advisor team. I like to work with a lawyer, an accountant, and a banker, and a money manager, and maybe a family coach, maybe an economist, the head of the family office. And together, we are an advisor team that makes recommendations. And my job is to convince everyone on the team that what I am recommending makes sense. Because when the family member looks at it and we say, this has been vetted by your banker and your attorney and your accountant and your money manager and your head of your family office, and it makes sense within your tax plan and your estate plan, it makes sense within your money management, they're going to say yes. So not only is it good business, but it's also a fun way to work. And when you work really well with these advisors, guess what else they have? They have other clients. And I have other clients. And I want my clients to have a great team of people around them. And they want their clients to have a great team around them. And I want to work with people who I understand how they work and who communicate well and don't play hide the ball. So our businesses grow together. And that's really cool too. So I'm a strong believer, long story short, in getting true professional advice.
That's great. Well, Howard, thank you for your time. Where time has come up, but very valuable information. And just as a recap, I love the fact that you said that your side hustle was actually the things that were related to your business, and it was things that you knew, and it was easy to start adding more income based on that because it was in your profession. The second was that you can outspend any income. And how true is that? I've met many people that were millionaire earners, and they were decamillionaire in debt. And you're exactly right. And then the last part is that having a financial professional or person to help you walk through this process makes it a lot easier, but more importantly, keeps you on track from self-destructing. So, Howard, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We'll see you again in the future.
Look forward to it.